There we go. I can hear you.
There we go. Okay. Hi, Luke.
How's it going?
Great. How are you today?
Very good. How have you been doing? Yeah.
Hanging in there. It seems a little weird. I'm super glad the weather's nice, so we can get out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Nuts.
I think I might go insane if it was raining out every day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is, I know it's wearing on everyone. It's wearing on me, and I'm ready for it to be done.
I agree. Okay, so just to let everybody who's going to watch this know, so your name's Julia Joy, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. And then so you run Z Group PR, right?
I do. I'm a consultant, and I've worked for other companies, but throughout my career, I've always had something on the side, and so I gave it a name, and and that's how I do my individual consulting work.
That's really cool. How long have you been doing that for? Or so
yeah, since 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. I pitched my first client in 2001, and that was, we had it was post 9/11. There were some economic concerns, and I was working for a PR agency at the time, and so they us all to halftime. And so with my contacts, somebody started asking questions about PR. And I said, yeah, I can totally help. And so they said, great, come pitch our CEO. And I was like,
wow.
Not before. And I did it, and I got the contract.
Wow, that's amazing. So you just kind of went both feet in then.
Yeah, I really did. I didn't have anything to lose. And they had come to me, and I knew that I could help them. And so I wasn't confused by the work. I had been doing the work professionally. And so, yeah, so just I've always had anywhere between 1 and 4 clients, 4 being the max, that I've worked on my own, even sometimes while I had an actual PR position at the same time.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay,
yeah,
so
thank you.
I'm just going to jump right into some questions. So this is a good, actually, I'll just start. So yeah, what was your pathway to your profession? For example, starting with your education, did you have any really cool internships or any at all? And then what experience kind of built you up to start off in PR?
Yeah, well, I actually originally wanted to go into advertising. And so I went to a really small art school in Arizona. Cool. That no longer exists. Actually, they were actually blended into ASU.
Oh, wow.
I'm 27 years ago. It was a program that was that students would go through, and then they would roll into ASU. And so they just absorbed it at some point. So my first degree is actually in graphic design.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. So I was at this really tiny art school, and we had really high level. It was in Arizona, so the professors were people who had lived in New York and Chicago and San Francisco, and so they were retired. It was like their retirement job was to come teach at this little school, and we were the first class. We got all Macintosh computers, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" And so we had all this state-of-the-art equipment, and I totally killed it in school. And I actually grew up in Portland, and so I left Arizona, and I moved home and got a job, an entry-level job at a graphic design agency. And I worked there for 3 months. I resigned during my 90-day interview because the graphics environment that I studied in was completely different than the real world of what graphic design was. And then I realized that it wasn't a fit for me. I actually don't have the personality to sit behind a computer.
Yeah, nor do I.
Yeah, and not talk to anyone. So then I was completely lost. I had gone to school, I'd tried really hard, spent some money. So didn't quite know what to do. So I was working at a temp agency. So I was going to different companies as a receptionist. And I went to work for an architectural firm. And so the receptionist would also be the administrative assistant, I guess, of each of the departments. And so I got to help the marketing department. And that's when I was like, oh, wait, there's all these other marketing careers. And they're like, oh, you'd be really good at PR. And I'm like, oh, what's that? That's a job. And they're like, oh, well, you talk to people and you do press releases and you do events. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can totally do that.
Yeah.
So I actually started taking writing classes because that was an area I just kind of had a basic undergrad. And so I didn't feel really strong. And during that time I moved to Los Angeles. And so it was during one of my communications classes. So then I knew PR is a real job. I want to work in PR. So I'm going to take business courses and writing courses with that. And I was offered an internship. It was a paid internship for an entertainment agency in LA. And I think because at that point I was a little bit older, I was more experienced than most kids who were taking college classes at that point.
Yeah.
That really helped because I had some real life experience. I'd had a job, knew how to go to work and what happens at work.
You weren't just jumping in right after your degree.
Yeah. And so that was really helpful. And so I actually went from, after I finished that coursework, I went to work full time for that agency in LA. And so that's what really started my PR career. So I went as an intern. So I was treated as a student. I didn't get to be in charge of anything, but it was very hands-on and I got to learn. And I have always advocated for internships. I think that's, they're very common in public relations.
Mm-hmm.
And so depending on your location or what type of work you want to do, it could be harder or easier to find them. But that's almost always the case. There's a lot of reliance on interns, and actually there's some parts of that I don't agree with. But in terms of the student experience and bridging your academic work to the real life environment, I really recommend internships.
Perfect. Well, yeah, good thing I've already started off with at least one.
Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, and I would, more than one. If you can do one each summer or break them up or whatever, I think it's great experience.
Awesome. Well, so yeah, moving on to my next questions. So what are your suggestions for, I guess, actually gaining employment after an internship per se in this position, like PR industry or just the communications degree or realm in general, I guess?
Yeah, I would say, so PR is really divided up into 3 categories. And so the agency side, so you have a PR agency or a marketing agency that does PR, and they have a PR team. And I think those internships are really valuable. The agency side of life is different than the in-house side. So versus working for the marketing or PR team within a corporation, there's some differences.
Okay.
On the agency side, they are very focused on hiring those interns. And so they select interns that they think have good potential, and you work really hard during your internship. And a lot of times you use that to roll into an open position. Yeah. And so if that's what the area you want to focus on and be on the agency side, that path is already there, and it's really easy to walk along that path. On the corporate side, really large corporations tend to have formal internship programs, but smaller companies don't. Mm-hmm. So I think that, especially in this economy, there's going to be a lot of downsizing. That's going to be really hard. And if you're in a location like we are, where there's a lot more small businesses than large organizations, reaching out to companies, even if they don't offer an internship, pitching them the idea of an internship and using that as kind of a training or onboarding path to employment. And people who live and work in bigger cities, they probably have access to bigger companies that do a lot more of that. So if somebody doesn't have access to that, then it's reasonable to suggest that they take the responsibility and start asking, sending emails, inquiring as to whether or not they'd be interested, if they can do that, and just start building up those relationships.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for those advice.
Yeah.
Let's see. So what are your suggestions for, it's kind of related to this, but my personal professional development, like what would you recommend other than, I guess, internships that we've been talking about for like not just education, but like, is there anything that comes to mind when you're thinking about like your development that really helped you thrive and grow?
Yeah, I was really, and I think this is easier for PR people. Earlier in my career, I was really active in our professional associations.
And what do you mean by that?
Like PRSA, the Public Relations Society of America, the national professional associations have a lot of resources that are really beneficial to somebody early in their career. Now, years later, you don't, maybe rely on them so much for education because you kind of, between 1 to 2 years and 10 years, after the 10-year mark, you have all of that basic experience. And so I would definitely recommend it. It's expensive.
Okay.
So when I've been lucky for some of the corporations that I've worked for, they've paid for it. So I've always taken advantage of that. It's really great networking and really great educational opportunities that are really specific to your profession. And so finding those local chapters, state chapters, and becoming a member. And they do offer student memberships. I know Public Relations Society of America is our largest U.S. professional organization. There's actually several others. And so there are tons of opportunities. And that's the one that's kind of the leader for PR. And then, of course, internationally, there's some other groups as well. I think they do a really good job of setting up the building blocks for success for people early in their career.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, and even if you didn't find a job where the employer would pay for it, it would be really worth it to invest that money for the networking and for the education.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'm going to skip over this next question and come back to it. So how do you find like new clients and new customers in this, like, I guess it's a lot different now since the whole COVID thing and everything, but how did you find, let's say, bring it back 4 months ago, how were you reaching out and finding new clients and customers in this really competitive world?
Yeah, PR is really competitive. There are a ton of freelancers and a ton of consultants like I am. Because I've always had corporate work, I've never felt like, oh, I need to grow my business or I need to grow an agency. It was always just me. And I've always found clients by word of mouth. So people that I knew that I worked with before, they moved to a new company and they said, oh, we know this PR lady, Jules, she's really good. We should talk to her.
Yeah.
And then sometimes just meeting somebody in a networking event or in a different professional environment, hey, what do you do? I do this. Oh, wow, that sounds like we could really use your help. I would say that I have been successful because I've also had agency work. So I've worked for agencies and I've also had corporate work. I would really discourage somebody to, especially early on, to go out on their own.
Yeah.
There's so much that you don't know. And so then you have to not only do the work, but the process of bringing in new clients is very sales intensive. And so I've worked for several agencies that have gone out of business because they didn't have a really strong sales team. So they could do amazing creative work, really great media outreach and communications, but their big client would leave and they'd be like, oh, now what do we do? So, so understanding early in your career, do you want to be responsible for bringing in new clients, that sales and business development aspect, or do you want to go work for an organization where you are the in-house, part of the in-house communications team, where your corporation is your client? I was a PR manager for CenturyLink. We had a huge team.
Wow. Yeah.
That's the company. Like I do PR for the company. I get a paycheck every hustle to bring in new business. And that's really, that brings a lot of stress. And so if you're not
Oh, it's breaking up a little bit.